Welcome to the Laurent Collective podcast, where we go deeper than just surface talk.
Each week, we'll explore everything from family, business, creativity, culture, and faith.
To make sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe and hop on to Instagram at Laurent Collective to chat with us about this episode. Hello, hello.
Hello, we're back.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to dive in today about talking about when something doesn't always happen in your time, when it's not always on your time.
Right.
We are fresh out of this, and so it's been on our mind a lot.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that you can plan for and, set certain types of deadlines or thoughts on things. And sometimes that timing just doesn't work out. So
Exactly. So we'll just give you a little update on like what we're talking about personally for our timing, and then some observations that we've had in it we're fresh on the other side of it.
Yeah.
For us, we had two major things that we've talked about a little bit, I think, in some past podcasts, but two major things that were on the horizon for us as we went into this fall. One was that we needed to renew our visas here to stay in the UK and continue to work here in the UK. And then the second one was that we were told, I guess it was back in July, by our landlord that we were renting our house from, that he was going to be selling it and needed us out. Needed us to move out of the house. And then he was like, you can move as soon as you want, which is really rare for a landlord to do here because normally like at this exact date, if you move sooner, you have to pay a fee for leaving too soon. And so he was like, you can move whenever you want and that kind of thing. And then in the midst of that too, we traveled to the United States for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So in our heads, I think we, for me at least, we got that notice in July.
Yep.
And we thought, like, great. We did look a little bit before we left for the States, but we were like, when we get back from the States, let's look at properties to rent and we'll get out of this house before October.
Yeah.
I think was what we had said, before October, maybe even mid-September. And that would be great. I think we even had a little bit of a wish, like before the kids started school. I don't know what we were thinking with that.
That would have been nice.
Because they started the first week in September. But that was our thinking of like, that seems like the right timing. And then as soon as we move, then we'll apply for our visas. Like all of that that's what we thought, right?
Yeah. I think it was just really like the fact that we were given this kind of open end date at our last house of when we could move out. Like we were kind of like, oh, cool. Like we could actually set our timing, if that makes any sense. Like we can create this new scenario. And so we really did. Like we were like, okay, this, like Maya was saying, like, let's try to get out before the kids start school and like doing all these different things. And that would allow us to do this and that and all that stuff. And obviously that didn't happen. So, but I think, a lot of times we can get caught up in our mind and like create this new scenario and timing of things that you want to go a certain way. And then it doesn't. And then what do you do in that? And that's, where we've been for a while. So it's been really hard.
And for me, like I've said this over and over, I am a planner. Like I really like to have things thought out. I don't like last minute stuff. I really don't like last minute stuff. And when someone throws something on me that is last minute, it really stresses me out. And so I know that is life and that does happen. However, when it's consistently happening, there's red flags for me.
Right.
And so, we had a date, as the landlord did say, you can move whenever you want to, but it needs to be by November 20th because that's when your contract is over. And so we also, I think, not only did we have in our heads, like, this is the timing we want it to be, we also had in our heads, like, we won't have any issues finding a house because everyone in our perception and what we've heard is everyone's moved out of London. Like you can't find a house outside of London because everyone's moving to the suburbs, but like not an issue in London.
And just past experience of trying to find a new place has not been difficult.
No,
it really hasn't.
I mean, the more difficult thing has been like deciding which place works for our family and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then when we entered into looking for houses, we quickly realized like the market here, it sounds like things are happening definitely in the United States and maybe some other places too, where the housing market, whether it's rental or buying, is just crazy.
Yeah.
And
Depending
so,
on where you're at, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah.
but we had no clue stepping into it that for some reason, there's all kinds of reasons we've been told. I still don't know what to believe or what is the truth. But for some reason, there are so few rentals, especially for a family of 5, that we ran into a lot of difficulty. That we go and look at a place, and by the time we got home and had a chance to like think about whether we wanted to rent it, it was gone. Or here it's a bit strange. You put in offers for rent, it'll be listed as so much per month, and then you say yes. Your offer basically will be like, yeah, we'll do that, and we'll stay there for 2 or 3 years for a contract or something. But people this time around were going over the price that they had listed per month. Sometimes, and this happened multiple times,
Significantly over.
like £1,000 per month over what the stated rent was. And so as a family of 5, we can't do that. That's
Or,
way
I
out
mean,
of our budget.
I remember, a couple of the times we went to look at some places, like you had 15 minutes to look at it because they had stacked up
like
the
25 people
viewings
looking at it.
of the property. Like, like 25 people that day. And
So
it
we
was just
entered
crazy.
into that, and we would go, or we'd call on a property because it had just been listed on the websites and stuff like that for rent. And they'd say, I'm sorry, somebody already took it without even going to see it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it was nuts.
I mean, it was just nonstop like that. It was so frustrating. And here, I think it was frustrating because that scenario in itself was frustrating. Like that was really like disheartening and stuff like that. But also, we had put on a time scale of like, this is going to be in our time of us moving. And like, if it goes past this, this is upsetting. And I don't understand why it's going past this.
Right.
And so once we hit like towards the end of September, we both really we were already stressed because of the situation. And then, every single day we were going on to see if new properties were coming up. They weren't. Again, like maybe if we were lucky, 2 properties would come up per week.
Yeah.
So then we
It was
started
really difficult,
looking at even smaller places. But then when we called on smaller places, they were not keen on having 3 kids in 1 bedroom and then us in another bedroom to go down to a 2-bedroom. As soon as I said that, they're like, oh, the landlord won't want that. And so it was just like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And so again, our time was we wanted to be in a place.
Yeah, our schedule was crumbling very,
totally
very
crumbling
fast.
in front of us. In the meantime, we did not want to apply for a visa until we had moved because then, like, you get these residency cards, all this stuff happens. And we had to apply because of when our current visa was expiring. We had to apply for a visa. And we, because we do a lot of stuff of like, we're on support here and things like that, we had to raise money for that. And again, we have wanted all of that to be sorted by like July.
Yeah, certain dates.
And it was just in time. And we were able, I mean, it was amazing what happened, but, and we were able to apply just in time. And so to give you an update on like where we are now, we are doing this from our new home. But literally, I guess we ended up moving 10 days before the 20th of,
10 days before we had to be at
before the
at the old
20th of
place.
November. So we still we got to not pay like an extra week of rent or something, I guess. But that was not, because it was a horrible timing. It was right before like Jude's birthday and then Pat's birthday, and we had a ton of stuff going on and that kind of thing. Because again, I remember we were like, fine, we're not moving in September. It would be great if we could move during the October like kids break that they have, their half term. And again, that didn't happen either. So it's like we were like, oh, I can be flexible.
Yeah,
I'm going to move my
you're
timing.
trying to be flexible. Yeah, definitely.
And yet still.
Yeah.
And I think, how this house came about too, shows like where our timing, for us, as most of you have heard us talk about, like we have a faith and we believe in God and that kind of thing. And so when we look to our timings, we know this, although we are just like I'm saying, we have had everything on our time schedule.
Right.
We look to our timings and our thoughts of what we want things to be, and when we should be like trusting God in it and saying, fine, I trust your timing. You'll work it out and that kind of thing. You'll work it out better than we imagined.
Exactly. Yeah.
We did have and when of course, so sorry if you can hear construction in the back. Of course, they're going to start stuff as soon as we're recording. Always happens. But one thing happened where there was a property that came up. It seemed too good to be true. It was right on the river with like balconies overlooking the river, things like that. Like we found it and we fell in love with this place without ever seeing it.
It was like really like in a lower side of our budget and
It
like
was amazing.
all that stuff. It was so cool.
And we both were like, we kept saying we're not falling in love with properties because of what could possibly happen and things like that. But we spent a whole day, because it was weekend, thinking about this place. And then we called to find out that it was, because we're like, this is it. This is why our timing hasn't worked out.
Yeah.
It's because this property is here. This is it. And then we called to find out it had already been taken and already rented, of course, because of where it was and the price they had it for.
I still think it was fake.
Yeah, Pat thinks it was fake, but I don't know. The person confirmed what I asked when I said, you're sure that's how much this is per month. So maybe the pictures were taken 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was in a horrible condition. I don't know. But that again was another thing of like, we were very disappointed again. We were already disappointed in all these we had another house we loved and we looked at, and
we just couldn't
we couldn't get it.
We couldn't get it because it was just because of the offers that went in were way over our budget. Again, it was like these multiple times of like, oh, this is why we've had to wait this long. Oh, this is how.
And you start to like, you go there mentally too. You start to envision your family like living in these spaces after you've looked at them and stuff. And you think like, oh, or like Pat would be like, I'm just going to lay out the furniture really quick to see how, because our boys share rooms. So like to see how the boys could share the room. I'm like, don't do that because we keep not getting, the places. So all that to say, this house came about with like, I just made a honest, real post on social media of just being frustrated of this, of trying to find a house and the timing of it and being stressed. And a friend on there reached out and said, hey, I have a connection. I have no clue if this will go anywhere, but you might as well call this guy and see if he knows anybody that could help you. Did that. Within 30 minutes of that phone call, he had connected me with somebody who had a property that they hadn't listed anywhere yet. They were going to list it. It was like a Thursday, and they were going to list it the next day and have photos taken. And we were able to literally call the person and say, can we come look at it before you list it? We're really interested. We looked at it and then said, we'll take it. And the person, we thought, surely they're going to say,
no way.
Sorry, like, great, I'll put your offer, but tomorrow we're going to list it and see how many offers come in over the weekend. And then we would have lost the property for sure. And so, but they didn't do that. They were like, great. And never was listed or anything, which is unheard of. And so, I think when we first looked here, we were like, this isn't exactly what we envisioned. Like we kind of hoped for some other things and stuff. But now that we've been here a week and a bit.
Yeah.
We all of us like, oh my gosh, this space is like, we love it. Like, sure, it doesn't have everything we needed, but like, it really is a great space for our family. And so again, that wasn't in our timing though. Like it wasn't in our head. It wasn't just our timing. It was also the way something looked and the way that we had like kind of, when you're looking for a house and stuff, you make a list of things.
Well, but I think too, like looking back too on these last couple of months and realizing, at certain points of it, was September really, did that make sense for us? Or in October, if we would have moved then, would that have made sense for us? Like things like that. Again, we've moved at a really busy time and all that stuff. It doesn't feel like it was the right time. But I think, if we get a couple more months down the road, we might actually see even more of why, the timing was the way it was,
Yeah.
And I think, Maya shared, like, because of our faith, we really trust that this is the right timing. And being in it is hard. Trusting that something will work out, is hard, and it's really hard to get through.
And it's exhausting too.
It's really exhausting. Then you start playing things in your head of like, well, if things aren't actually happening, is this what we're supposed to be doing?
You do that a lot.
I mean, there's just so many things.
Pat kept saying, great, we're going to get our visas, but we're going to have no place to live.
Yeah, I go down if you've seen the Marvel What If series, like I go down the what if scenarios like crazy. if this happens, then this is going to happen, and this, and yeah. So I stress myself out completely. And so I think it's just, again, getting to a point of just trusting that, okay, if this is supposed to go, then this is where we're going to be, and being okay with that in some ways. So
yeah, but it's hard to set into that being okay.
yeah,
It's hard.
yeah.
It's especially hard when you feel like, like I feel like I've been given this vision, or this how this thing is going to go, or this thing I should be stepping into. But again, it's not happening in the timing you were hoping it to.
Yeah.
I think that is so hard. I mean, going way, 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 way back is like when the first time we set foot in London, and we were like, we feel like we should live. There was something like that was it just felt us that we felt like we should live in London. It's so hard to explain, but I'm sure you've experienced that before, of just like, this place feels right.
Or it's not even a place, or this thing feels right. This is, yeah, exactly.
This seems like where I should be.
Yeah.
But how many years was it? 12 years?
No,
Longer?
more than that, like 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Because
that was when that happened. Yes, but I'm saying when we actually moved to London.
When we moved to London.
Then we actually moved to London, and things, worked out and things like that. It took
like
that
years,
long.
Yeah.
I mean, that was definitely not on our timing. And it's not like, also, we had just laid it to rest because we were like, this isn't happening anymore. And I can't remember what episode it is, but we have talked about that, about how we got to London. And so, I realize we're using an example that it has happened in a number of months.
True.
But there's been plenty in our life that it has not been like that. And we're using an example because it's fresh on our mind, of the things that I didn't want to have to be packing up our house and sorting out everything in a move and stuff like that within, I think we had like 7 days or something crazy like that. Calling movers, spending a whole day calling movers, and half of them saying, we can't move you, it's too soon, and things like that.
Yeah.
We had sorting out, and we still don't really have solid internet here.
Yeah.
And all kinds of things like that. Again, like I said, I do not love last minute. And so to me, I was like, this is exactly what I didn't want to happen. And it's all generally, like I said, we're still working out our internet. Generally, everything else has worked out, and it's been fine. But it just, but we wanted to use that example of like having waited over a decade for something that we felt like was the right thing for it to actually come to fruition. That's hard.
Really hard, yeah.
And that's, like I said, we are on the other end now, celebrating being in a new house. Our visas were just approved. Like, all of it is settled into place, but we're both a little bit like, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
Pretty tired now as well.
Definitely. And it's funny to even think about, when we initially came to London, and just thinking about how that dream maybe was planted. Right. And then, when it first didn't come to fruition, when it came back up, I think being able to remember that dream and then acting upon it, and in the new opportunity, really, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I just think just being reminded of that dream, maybe if there's something that you had happened to you a long time ago, and it was a dream, but then you had to kind of put it on the back burner, but maybe something recently has come up that's brought that to the front. Maybe it's something that you need to pay attention to,
for sure.
And maybe start to take some steps towards it, and trust in that, and see what happens. Because it's just crazy to think about how that process for us to be here and all that stuff.
And when you look back, I can't say, it's maybe a little too fresh for me right now to look back and see like all the different reasons of God's timing and this current stuff for us. But like when I look back at that time when we had said like, oh, we should move to London, years, before we had kids or anything, we weren't ready. Like looking back at that time and all we've learned like since then, before we moved to London and stuff, like our character part wasn't ready. We hadn't like worked on our marriage in certain ways. I mean, we're always working on our marriage, but like it wasn't at a great stable place. I mean, there's just like all these different things that I look back and think like, why did it take over a decade for something that we felt like, oh yeah, we should really, dive into this. Why did it take that long? We learned and developed so much during that time.
Right.
And so, I think that's something to keep in mind if you're in a place where, yes, it's still frustrating and don't want to discredit that. However, like lean into those other things. And we really did. I mean, we just literally put it away. Like that's just never happening. We'll take the kids on a visit sometime there. And then when it resurfaced, we were like, oh, well, maybe we are ready for this. And so, if it is something like that it's not like, oh, it's just taken a matter of months and it still wasn't on your timing. If it's years and whatever that may be, it's not that you need to like let it die, but don't ignore what else is going on in your life presently and where you can learn and that kind of thing, because then you'll take that to whatever that thing is when you when you get to it, kind of thing. And that's how we felt so much is once we did move here, even for our kids and the ages that they were at. And yes, there was some difficulties, but also there was just, it worked differently than maybe if they had been younger or those kinds of things. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind. If you're in that process, you feel like you're waiting on something or something is not happening in your timing, don't discredit what you can learn. And I can think, as I'm saying this, I can think the things we've probably learned in the past couple of months. For sure. I'm still processing them is probably why I'm not sharing them yet. But that's just something to know and realize, like, I'm not going to discredit this time as I wait on things, because it can be used and it can be used really well too.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's there's certain things that can be refined in you in the waiting, to allow you to really step fully into the thing that you might be hoping for or waiting for, when it does come.
Exactly. Wonderful. Well, we'd love to hear from you guys on this too. The reason why we're sharing this is because several people have said, like, how are you dealing with this, with the timing of the house and all that stuff? How have you dealt with it? So that's why we wanted to share with you. So we'd love to hear from you of some things that you have learned when you're waiting on things or when something hasn't happened in your time. I feel like probably all of us have experienced that.
Oh, for sure.
So we'd love to hear from you. You can pop over on Instagram at Laurent Collective and send us a message. And we will definitely write back and would love to chat with you. We hope you find this that you can just take a deep breath if something's not going in your timing right now, and just look around you. What can you learn in it? It's okay to be frustrated, but also how can you continue to take a step each day towards that?
Definitely.
It's Christmas season, officially, kind of, I think. And that means that you can start thinking of your gift ideas for your loved ones. And we would love for you to check out Laurent Collective for those gifting ideas. There's everything on there, from mugs to t-shirts, to tote bags, to cozy hoodies and sweatshirts and prints for homes. And we think that you would be able to give a gift that's going to put a smile on someone's face. So head over to laurentcollective.com and check out the gift ideas we have for you. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Laurent Collective podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, which helps others find our podcast. Continue the conversation with us over on Instagram at Laurent Collective.
We look forward to going deeper than just surface talk with you again next week.